Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes, and we want to welcome you to our webinar tonight on the ranked choice voting roadmap. So again, we'll have a couple of minutes to start. My name is Mark Miller. I'll be moderating tonight. And with me is Lisa Alrout, who's the Executive Director of FairVote Washington. And just looking as people are coming in, I can see that we have some folks from Kitsap County and King County. And Lisa, you're really good at spotting ranked choice voting supporters.
This is exciting. Folks are pouring in. We're so excited to see you here tonight, everyone. We're up to about 30 of you in the room now. I'm seeing people from all over the state. Definitely, let's see, let's look at South King County, Port Townsend, Bellingham, Everett, Vashon Island. Hello, Mel. Gosh, look at you all everywhere, all over this state. We are pouring in. We're up to about 35 or so. I think we have around a little over 100 signed up tonight. We'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll be into our show.
Well, it's good to see people from throughout the state, from north and south, west and east. And as Lisa said, we'll start in about a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I really actually don't know everybody on the call. That's exciting. We're getting new folks, people we haven't maybe seen at too many of our events. This is a great event to start with. If you're here for the first time at a FairVote Washington event, we're excited to be able to let you know what is coming up in the next couple months. And
looks like we have a range of people joining us, both people who've been supporters for a while and those who are new to ranked choice voting and FairVote Washington. So it's really nice to see that range of people, and welcome to everyone.
I see Tim way out in Okanagan. Eli, maybe you're still in Colorado even.
So with that, let's get started, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So again, good evening. My name is Mark Miller, and I'll be moderating tonight. And our goal tonight is to give you an update on the progress we've made and our strategy for the coming year and beyond, and really give you an insider's look at FairVote Washington and what we're doing for ranked choice voting in Washington. We're very interested in your questions, and as they come up, please type them into the Q&A feature. They'll either be answered online or I'll ask some of our presenting team, because we'll leave plenty of time later in the session. I just want to tell you a little bit about my own background. I'm on the board of FairVote Washington, and I'm the chair of our program committee. It's like a strategy committee. My professional life, I retired from the Polyclinic. It's a medical group in Seattle, and I was the chief medical officer there. You know, my road to FairVote Washington was that I really wanted to do something to strengthen democracy, and I wanted to be in the fight. And I educated myself and looked around, and I realized that for me, ranked choice voting was a needed foundational reform, leading to other reforms that would fight the things that were bothering me, like hyperpartisanship and voter alienation, and getting voices heard. And I'm sure, likewise, each of you have your own particular reasons for being interested in ranked choice voting. So let's see if we can help strengthen what you know and share our information tonight. And with that, I'm going to ask our presenters, Stephanie and Colin, to introduce themselves. First, Stephanie, and then Colin, you can take it from there.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. It is December. I know that it can be difficult to make time in your schedules, so I'm really grateful that you are all here. Again, my name is Stephanie Houghton. I use she, her pronouns. I am the legislative director and the organizing director for FairVote Washington. I joined this team in March of this year, and I moved here to Washington about a year ago. Originally, I am from Massachusetts, and I've kind of spent the last 10 years hopping around the country working for different candidates. Most recently, I was in South Carolina as Elizabeth Warren's operations director. And then I hopped over to Kansas and managed a congressional race out there for the mayor of Topeka. We were trying to flip a seat. Alas, Michelle De La Isla is not in Congress. And then I decided to come up to Washington, honestly, just because my brother was here and I needed a break from politics, and I just fell in love with the place and decided to stay. And then I found my way to ranked choice voting. So a priority for me over the last 10 years, as I said, has been working for women and really promoting anyone who maybe traditionally doesn't have a seat at the table. And I've had a really good time doing it. And I loved all of the races that I worked on, but one at a time just wasn't cutting it for me anymore. And so for me, ranked choice voting is a really cool way to just flip the table. Our current system is not working one at a time. So I think ranked choice voting is the best, clearest, fastest way to really make the table bigger, make more people welcome at it. It's about expanding access to the ballot, not just for the voter, but for the candidate too. So that's me. And I am joined here this evening by Colin Cole, and I will let him introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Colin Cole, and I am FairVote Washington's policy director. So my background coming to this work is maybe a little unusual. Before I started doing work in the political space, I actually worked in television production here in the city of Seattle. I worked on a very bad reality TV show. It was about the behind-the-scenes drama of a family-run country music variety theater in Branson, Missouri. It went for one season and got canceled immediately. It, amongst other things, was not the most fulfilling work in my life. And while I was working in TV, I actually got a chance to work on a campaign here in Washington part-time. Just on the side, I wanted a little extra money, and I thought it was a cool issue, which was the 2014 Initiative 594 campaign to mandate universal background checks on gun sales, which is something that I personally really cared about. And then when I worked on that, I sort of got the bug of doing something that I really believed in, especially contrasting with something that I really didn't. So I decided that I'd make a big career transition. And a few months later, I personally was inspired by the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign of 2015. In particular, I didn't fully agree with all of his solutions, but I really did think that Senator Sanders had his finger on the button when he observed that there was a big disconnect between public opinion and public policy, that a lot of times the opinions of voters don't actually translate into the laws that get passed. And that was what drove me to go work for his campaign. And after that, I just decided to just continue staying in the political space, but I was always more interested in the issues. And in the wake of the 2016 elections, I had felt that ranked choice voting was something that really needed to happen. Believe it or not, I've been a ranked choice voting fan for a long time, and I, way back in college, more than a decade ago, would talk about ranked choice voting at parties to my friends. And I'd always said, someone really needs to work on ranked choice voting. And everyone kept saying, yeah, like that's ever gonna happen. So in the wake of 2016, I said, fine, I keep saying someone needs to do something about ranked choice voting. No one's doing something about ranked choice voting. So I'll do something about ranked choice voting. And I went online, and me and a few others arranged the first ever meetup of FairVote Washington in December of 2016. It was basically me and about 20 other mostly white, mostly male people in a Cap Hill coffee shop. I think it was Cafe Vita. And that'll actually transition us right into our first slide, because we ended up spending the next year, 2017, really just trying to figure out how we wanted to work. How did we want to advance ranked choice voting? Did we want to be an organization? Did we want to work with other organizations and support them? Who were we going to be? These are all the questions we asked ourselves. And I'll let Steph tell the story of where we went from there. And Steph, you are muted.
Sorry, 2 years in. I'm gonna figure it out one of these days. Thank you, Colin. So yes, I'm gonna talk a little bit now about FairVote Washington, where we were, where we are, and where we're going. FairVote Washington exists to bring ranked choice voting to Washington State. So we are, that's what we're doing. It's a pretty simple mission. Like Colin said, he was feeling a little bit inspired, might not be the right word, but invigorated by the results of the 2016 election. This meeting in this coffee shop happened that he put together. And 2016 into 2017 was really about becoming legitimate. And I can speak to that a little bit too. At the end of 2016, I fully admit I kind of stuck my head in the sand and said, nothing I can do. Don't worry, that was over by January of 2017. But they really focused on like, how can we like really increase our legitimacy? How can we start engaging with candidates and training volunteers? Because that's what you have to do first. You have to start building a network. A group in a coffee shop is a great start. But organizing is really about empowering other people, right? Empowering your circle so that they can empower theirs. That's why I love organizing. So brass tacks, 2016, no staff. 2016, no budget. 2016, the entire group fit inside a coffee shop. So that is where we were. 2017 into 2018 was about that growth, right? So 2018 obviously was another election year. There were some pretty exciting things happening all over the country. The Democrats ended up taking back the House. Republicans held on to the other parts of the government, but FairVote Washington stayed powerful or continued growing in power because they're bipartisan. We're bipartisan. We're nonpartisan, and it's really all about like just really harnessing that energy, building on that energy until we get to 2021, which was, there we go, 5 years later. So now here we are. Because of all that organizing from that coffee shop 5 years ago, we are now up to 4 staff, which I know does not sound like we're ready to take over the world, but we totally are. 2021 budget was $300,000. And this is the really exciting number. We went from less than 100 supporters in 2021. This, by the way, is only Washington State, to 9,742 people who have told us that they like ranked choice voting. So there are more ranked choice voting supporters out there. We just have to go find them. These are the folks who found us, who said, I'm ready to learn more about ranked choice voting, or I'm ready to, take an action. I'm ready to join my chapter. I'm ready to hop on the phones for ranked choice voting. And that's kind of what makes FairVote Washington really special, is that in 2016, there was this group of folks who wanted to start working towards ranked choice voting. And a lot of those groups that were started, I'm sad to say, in December of 2016, sort of disappeared. This one is still going strong. It's only getting stronger, which means that we are ready for next year, which I am the most excited about. So right now, in December of 2021, we have really built up our political power through our PAC. That means that we're able to donate to candidates. We are able to just really have that seat at the table. Because for any issue campaign, you want to be thinking through not just who's on our side, but who's available to us, right? Where is the table so we can go have our seat at it? And that's what we've really leaned in on literally this month. So that we can be working on advancing the local options bill and the presidential primaries bill. Colin will talk about those 2 pieces of legislation in just a minute. So don't worry, we're going to cover it. But that's really what we've been doing for the last couple of months, is continuing to build up that power, and then investing in our local options bill and our presidential primaries bill. And next year is going to be the test to see how it's gone. And I think we've really spent some good time investing in that. Next slide, please. We were also able, in continuing to support the local options bill and the presidential primaries bill. In addition to those things, we have 2 wins already on the books. Simply getting ranked choice voting on the ballot in Clark County and San Juan County were 2 really big achievements. It has taken, I don't think I exaggerate when I say it's taken over a year to make both of those things happen. We were only able to put them on those two ballots, not because we just forgot about the rest of the other counties, because they have their charters set up so that they're already ready for ranked choice voting. They don't have to wait for the State House to do anything. Clark County and San Juan County are ready for action on ranked choice voting. So we're really excited that we have gotten those on the ballot and will be working really hard on them into next year. So where we're going. So we're going to pass the local options bill. We're going to pass the presidential primaries bill, she says with all the confidence in the world. I have a lot of confidence. I have to tell everybody on this call, as a Bay Stater, which is actually what people from Massachusetts are called, contrary to what you may have heard, as a Bay Stater, I have a full-time legislature available to me. Here in Washington, they're only going to meet for 60 days. So we got to pass the local options bill, we got to pass the presidential primaries bill, and we got to do it fast. Halfway through January, they're going to get started, and they're going to finish just partway into March, which is fine. Tonight's meeting is really to like dig in on that legislation and to talk about all of those options that are available to us. That's not, FairVote Washington isn't going to shut down after that though. FairVote Washington is going to continue working on local campaigns like Clark and San Juan County. Those elections are not going to happen until November. We also have a couple of other pieces that are still coming together for next year. But next year is going to be a really big year for ranked choice voting in Washington. I can absolutely say that. We are also going to grow our staff. We are in the process of hiring an organizer. We are going to keep working on that because again, FairVote Washington has already proved, right, that you win by organizing. That's what we have to do. More organizers, more people actually being able to talk to our neighbors about ranked choice voting. This is going to be one-on-one. It's a conversation. Most people, including myself, do not just hear ranked choice voting and think, great, I'm all set. I'm off to lead this parade. So I'm excited to start being able to invest in those organizers. And we're also going to be bumping up our budget to about $600,000, which will cover those organizers and everything that they need. Also investing, of course, in digital and communications. So and all of that is happening just next year. So I'm really excited to get to work on these campaigns, to be lobbying for the local options and presidential primary bills, and to see what next year brings with all of this development that has happened over the last 5 years. And now I will toss it over to Colin.
All right, so there's 2 primary pieces of legislation that we're working on, and we'll talk a bit about what they are. And again, if you've got any questions, we'll have plenty of time to dive into that. So our biggest piece of legislation in terms of how much time we've spent on it is the ranked choice voting local options bill. This is what would say jurisdictions around the state can use ranked choice voting if they want to. I first started working on this bill in some form of an official capacity back in September of 2017. So it has been, we're going to be coming up on 5 years, I guess, which is very cool. It shouldn't be discouraging because there's actually a truism in the legislature that a bill needs at least 3 sessions to get passed. 1 session to first get the idea out there for folks to even think about it. A second session for folks to actually take you seriously and learn about it and grapple with it. And then at least this third session to really drive it across the finish line. And that's where we are right now. And we're following that path pretty well. When we first got introduced, we had a single bill hearing and then nothing happened. There was no action on the bill. There was no follow-up on the bill. That was it. And then the bill sort of just hung out until 2019. In 2019, we not only had a hearing on the bill, but the legislative committee we worked with brought in national experts from across the country to come and present to them on ranked choice voting. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 individuals from around the state drive to Olympia to provide in-person testimony. And we actually got out of the policy committee. A majority of the committee said that the legislature should pass this bill. And then we got hung up in the House Appropriations Committee. This last year, at the beginning of the year, in 2021, we started off in the policy committee. There was unprecedented testimony. We had literally almost 2,000 individuals from around the state officially note their position as pro on the record. A new coalition of organizations, 28 of them to be specific, from around the state has formed to support this legislation. The list of sponsors supporting the bill not only includes the majority of the leadership in the House and Senate Democratic caucuses, but also for the first time ever, it's a bipartisan piece of legislation. And even state agencies are taking it seriously, like the Washington State Attorney General's office, which formally supports the bill. So we are really in a much better position now than we were 5 years ago because of all of the work that we've been able to do that Steph just described. So what does the bill actually do? You might be confused because Steph just said that ranked choice voting is going to be on the November ballot in Clark County and San Juan County. But didn't I just say we need this bill to get passed for us to be able to use ranked choice voting in Washington? The answer, as it often is with elections, is that it's complicated. The short version is that Washington State election code is a mess. It's complicated. It's not just one section. It's 5 different sections that all reference each other. And as it happens, nonpartisan charter counties, of which there are 4 in the state, are the only jurisdictions that are allowed to skip the top 2 primary if they would like, and to use ranked choice voting in the general election, the way that the vast majority of places that use RCV in the country do. And that's why San Juan and Clark County, 2 of those 4, are going to have ranked choice voting on the ballot in November. King County, a third of those 4, was able to talk about ranked choice voting earlier this year in 2021 because they also fall into that category. But if you want to bring ranked choice voting anywhere else, to a non-chartered county, to your average code county with a county commission, to a city, whether it's a first-class charter city or a second-class city, to an agency like a port commission or a fire district, this bill needs to pass. And this bill says that jurisdictions, if they want to, can adopt ranked choice voting. It's very simple. You don't even have to like ranked choice voting to like the bill. You just have to think that if the people of, say, Spokane want to be able to use ranked choice voting, just like they do in New York, just like they do in Oakland, just like they do in Utah, that they should be allowed to. So it's really not a particularly controversial bill, or at least it shouldn't be. And we are working very hard to make sure that it's set up to pass this upcoming legislative session in 2022. And we're really excited about it. There's one other bill that we're working on this year. And we first started laying the groundwork for this back in 2020. And it actually would have been introduced back in January, except there were some virtual only remote session rules that made getting this bill introduced a challenge. But this bill would have us use ranked choice voting for the presidential primaries. This actually is a really salient issue in Washington State. If you don't remember all of the ballot returns from March of 2020 like I do, you might be surprised to learn that more than 25%, more than 1 in 4 of every vote in the Democratic presidential primary went to a candidate who wasn't in the race. A lot of that is because in the weekend before our election, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and Senator Amy Klobuchar dropped out of the race. and people had already voted. They had turned in their ballots. We actually first started hearing about this issue in Washington state from our very own county elections clerks, who started telling us that they received phone calls from people asking to cancel their ballots because they wasted it on someone who wasn't in, that they wanted to return a new ballot. They asked for a do-over, and they couldn't do that. And actually, if you go back to the early vote records that were filed before those candidates dropped out, the number of people who voted for candidates that would go on to drop out at that point was 1 in 3. So we know that ranked choice voting would have changed the presidential primary, and it would have let more votes count. And whether the winner was the same or different, that's just a good thing. That could have changed the winner. It could have given the winner more legitimacy. Multiple candidates could have gotten through because Washington state allocates its delegates proportionately. So it's really important. There's a clear benefit, and we're actually not pioneers on this one. Back in 2020, 4 other states used ranked choice voting for the presidential primaries. And those were Nevada, Kansas, Wyoming, and Alaska. And actually, in the year 2020, the state of Maine also passed a law saying that they would use ranked choice voting in their 2024 presidential primaries. So there's really good precedent to show that this works, that it's easy, that it's accessible, that it solves a really clear problem. And for us, another really exciting thing is, this won't surprise anyone, but our goal is to bring ranked choice voting to the state of Washington. And although running a series of campaigns in places like Spokane or Seattle or Yakima or Clallam or Clark County will be really helpful in making sure people have experience with ranked choice voting, getting ranked choice voting adopted for the presidential primaries immediately means every single Washington state voter looks at, interacts with, and uses a ranked choice voting ballot. And so we're really excited about the prospects of getting this introduced and passed to not only give us a more effective presidential primary in 2024, but to really get Washington voters ready to go. With that, I'll hand it back to Mark.
All right, Stephanie and Colin, thank you both. I was thinking, watching you guys present, that ranked choice voting would be a great way for us to have everyone here tonight decide which of us has the most festive holiday attire. So I'm hoping to be the dark horse candidate on that. So, so tonight we summarized for everyone where we've been, really humble beginnings, and where we've come, the energy, the excitement we have, the wins we had this year, the building that we did this year, and what we'll be doing the next couple of years going forward. And this was only possible with your commitments, your various kinds of commitments, and your investments. And please know we really value your opinions, your insights, and your questions. So with that in mind, we're gonna open up for some questions that I'll ask for Colin and Stephanie. And you know, please write your questions in the Q&A feature if you haven't already. Start off, I'm gonna ask both of you about county auditors. As I recall, the county auditor in Clark County was supportive, which really helped with the win there. Auditors are so important in the outcomes of our efforts. Where do things stand with auditors?
I'll take that one first. So Mark is right. The auditors are really important. I want to clarify just for folks who might be new to democracy reform language. Auditors are the folks in charge of counting the ballots. I think we all got a lesson in that in 2020 between you know, some recounts that were called for. But auditors are the ones in charge of counting the ballots, and that is county by county here in Washington. So their support for this way of counting ballots is really important. The auditors have been, are honestly, and I say this as an election nerd, a bunch of election nerds, and they just have a bunch of questions. I don't think that they're gonna, like, you know, jump in and say, great, the way that I've been doing my job for the last 30 years needs to change. But what we have been doing is having one-on-one conversations with some of them, having conversations in smaller groups with others. Also, Julie Wise, who is the auditor from King County, was actually able to pull in experts from across the country to kind of give a an overview of what ranked choice voting is, which was really valuable because it gave the auditors space to ask questions, which I think they found to be really informative. I think the person who asked this question said, Mark Kimsey down in Clark County ended up being able to talk to the commissioner, the election, the charter folks down there about ranked choice voting, and he was able to just be a resource for them, which was like vital, a vital support system for us. So it's, you know, one at a time, but again, like this is a new system and we're asking them to change the way they've been doing things. But these conversations really, I've been in these conversations and they're really, really effective. Colin, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, what I would add is that for a lot of the elections administrators, I think when we first started out, I think a lot of them thought that we were adversarial, that we saw them as opponents, people that we wanted to do something differently, that we wanted to foist something upon them. And as we started making it more clear that we wanted to work with these elections administrators, that we understood that if we're successful in winning ranked choice voting, they're the ones who are going to have to actually make it work. So it's probably good if we make sure that they're up to speed on everything. We started having much more collaborative conversations, and that really helped things, I think, in a meaningful way. And of course, you know, if anyone's going to be small c conservative in a local elected office, it should be the election administrator who wants to make sure that every vote is counted, that they're not accidentally disenfranchising people or introducing problems. So that makes sense. One consistent theme we've seen around the state and really around the country is that a lot of the questions elections administrators have right off the bat when they're first hearing about ranked choice voting are really sharp, valid, and important questions that have actually already been answered by the use of other jurisdictions in places like Minnesota, in places like Maryland, in places like North Carolina. And so what quickly ends up happening is elections administrators realize that all these potential problem points and breakdowns that they've identified are real and they're things to be concerned about. And we figured out how to get around them or that they aren't problems. And so I think that's one reason why we've been able to help broker more collaborative relationships with the elections administrators, and that we've ended up moving them formally on the record. They were opposed to the ranked choice voting local options bill in 2018 and 2019 and 2020, and they were other in 2021. So they're no longer opposing the ranked choice voting local options bill, which is honestly a really huge step forward.
Okay, great. Here's a question. Someone wants to know how they can connect with their local chapter.
That's a step.
Wonderful. Well, okay, that question is going to have a little bit of a different answer depending on where you are. Some of our chapters are just more active than others. The best and fastest way is to sign up on our website, which is just fairvotewa.org. .org. Some local chapters have regular meetings, others just have regular phone banks, but if you sign up there, then you will get a phone call from a real person within a week of signing up, and they'll be able to kind of run through all of the options. So we have a couple of different ways to get started. Mark, I'm kind of gonna run with this question just a little bit. So feel free to wave your hands if I'm getting too long-winded here. We've got a ton of ways for you to get involved, and your local chapter is a great way to start. Here we are though in Zoom times. So we do a lot of stuff on Zoom. So if your preferred chapter is not as active or meets on days that you're not available, we've got other groups going on all the time. So a really great place to start is this meeting. So you're already on it for that. We also have regular Why Ranked Choice Voting Works webinars, and that's a really cool opportunity, I think, to not only learn why ranked choice voting works, but also to learn some more vocabulary and ways to talk about ranked choice voting, and also to meet other folks who are maybe just getting involved in the movement, because organizing is like really boring and lonely if you try to do it by yourself. So it's good to make some friends along the way. And then And then once you go from there, you can join we've got phone banks on Mondays and Wednesdays. You can become one of those folks who calls people right after they sign up. They're really the best phone calls because they're people who have just signed up to join ranked choice voting. They are actually someone who wants to get a phone call around dinner time. And so they're actually a really fun phone option there. And then we have everything. We've got like book clubs. We really do try to make this as volunteer friendly as possible. I identify as a woman of field. I was brought up in the organizing community. I think that there is great value in just talking to the people around us and having those conversations. So that is what I will say,
Okay.
but I'm happy to talk more about it.
All right. Sounds like it. So thank you. I mean, your enthusiasm is always so energizing. It really is. I want to combine two questions about presidential primaries. One of the questions is, does the presidential primaries bill advance 4 candidates to the general election? And then the other part that I'll add in is, would the presidential primaries with ranked choice voting automatically redistribute votes for candidates who've ended or suspended their campaigns, like you had mentioned, Colin?
Superb questions. And there's a concrete answer to one and a not yet concrete answer to the other. It would not advance 4 candidates to the general election. And this is because the way that the Washington state presidential primary is conducted is inherently partisan. There is the Democratic presidential primary and the Republican presidential primary. And then if they're able to get enough signatures or votes in the previous general election, the Green or Libertarian presidential primaries. And it's on one ballot, and you have to choose one race to vote in. And then the way the Washington state law is written, Washington state says whatever nominee the major parties say is their nominee through their own internal nominating process is the one we will put on our November general election ballot. And so there will still just be one ultimate winner of the Democratic or Republican presidential nominees, unless the DNC or RNC or any of the other parties change their nominating methods to have more than one winner, which would be interesting. But I don't think is in the cards, and there's not political will to change that right now, at least in Olympia. As for the automatic redistribution, that's actually one of the final lingering policy questions that we're currently working through with the legislative caucus staff at the legislature, is should you automatically redistribute the votes of candidates who have withdrawn and treat them as an eliminated candidate, or should you keep them in anyway and just run the process down until you've eliminated all the candidates? There's pros and cons to both. That actually is one area where we're seeking feedback from Washington's political parties because since they have their own rules for apportioning delegates, it's a smoother process if the two are as compatible as possible. But very astute question, and we'll have an answer for you before the end of the year.
Good. Okay.
Isn't legislating fun?
Scott asks, any plans to push for proportional representation?
Steph, you want me to take that one?
Go for it. I get excited about organizing. You get excited about proportional representation. We're a good team.
There's 2 answers to your question. The first answer is yes, and we're already doing it. The ranked choice voting local options bill will provide 2 options to local governments. Option 1 is to introduce single winner ranked choice voting, the way they use it in Oakland, in Minneapolis, Santa Fe, depending on how you count, 20 to 50 jurisdictions around the country. The second option, though, will be for jurisdictions to have the ability to choose to use proportional ranked choice voting. And there are a number of places in the US that currently use this system. Obviously, it's the most common form of ranked choice voting around the world. And that would be one of the options available to jurisdictions if that bill passed. And I do want to say that we're not like sneaking it in there. That is a big part of it. The Washington for Equitable Representation Coalition talks about that component as one of their biggest reasons for supporting the bill. And we've been talking about it with folks when we've been presenting around the state. to community groups and to local governments and charter review commissions. And we already have had a few jurisdictions signal to us that that's something that they would like to explore if the bill gets passed. As for on a grander non-local level, there's still a few things to finalize and iron out in terms of kinks, but there is a very real possibility that when we are ready to run an initiative or to adopt ranked choice voting in the state of Washington for our state legislator and state offices, that could end up being a ranked choice voting with proportional representation initiative that hasn't been finalized yet, but that is very much a possibility.
Okay, thanks. Carol asks, what talking points are the opponents of RCV using?
Ooh, Steph, you should take the first stab.
All right. I mean, there are only a few. No, I'm just kidding. Opponents of ranked choice voting are often heard to be saying, ranked choice voting is too confusing. Voters will not understand it. And therefore we should not use it. I haven't met any voters who don't understand ranked choice voting. To be fully honest, if you, I've been able in the last year, I've only done it once, but I have been able to go out and hand people to be thoroughly honest, we were ranking fair food, but to give them a ranked choice ballot. And part of the experiment was just to say, can you just vote on this? And there was, one line of instruction at the top that said, rank your preferences. And that was it. And I'm not exaggerating. Everyone from the 7-year-old all the way up just followed the instructions. The hard part for ranked choice voting, I think, is not the voter side, right? It's the part that Colin and I were just talking about with the auditors. It's not difficult for voters. So I think that's kind of a disingenuous argument to be making. And usually when I encounter someone who's making that argument, I usually say, just in a non-confrontational way, I haven't met any voters who are actually confused by ranked choice voting. And I ask them if they are confused by ranked choice voting and if I can clarify any questions that they might have. With a lot of practice, you can really get a good conversation going, and it's kind of an opening to have a different conversation. So that's the main argument against ranked choice voting. It's too confusing. We do actually have data that is not me at the Pierce County Fair asking people about food. New York City just used ranked choice voting to elect their mayor and to elect their city council. Colin's going to know this number, and he's going to give me a hard time for not knowing it. But a very high percentage said they want to use it again. I know it's at least over 70, but it might be over 80. Said, I want to use ranked choice voting again. So those folks were not confused by it. And I do know over 90% said that it was easy to use. So that's the main argument that I've heard. And it's kind of for me anyway, it's kind of straightforward as far as responses go. Colin, do you want to touch on another? I don't want to spend too much time talking about people who don't like ranked choice voting, but if you want to take one, go for it.
I can wrap it up quickly. I guess I will just double down on what Steph said, in that for the most part, it is, if we want to be generous, we'll say good intention, misconceptions. And actually, FairVote Washington hosted a year ago with our legislative fellow Eli Schwanitz, who is on this Zoom meeting, I believe, a really great webinar on asking an effective town hall question when you're talking with a legislator. And one of the things that we found is really important is to actually inject into your question framing that corrects these misconceptions. Because often if you go up to a legislator and you say, hi, my name's Colin, I'm a big fan of ranked choice voting. Do you like ranked choice voting? That legislator might say, no, I don't. Let me tell you why. It's actually too complicated, but I appreciate your gusto. And then they'll move on. But if instead you say, hi, my name's Colin. I'm a volunteer at FairVote Washington. I'm just curious how you feel about ranked choice voting. There's recently been actually dozens and dozens of elections and case studies and research around the country that shows that 90% of voters think it's easy, and the vast majority who ever use it like it and want to use it again. So what do you think? And now that legislator can't just say, I don't like it, it's complicated, because they'll seem dumb. And instead they have to engage with the substance of your question. And usually it is the auditor thing, like Steph mentioned. It's folks who have genuine concerns, who are worried it might be confusing, who are worried it might be complicated or hard to report or challenging to audit. And in every circumstance, we already know that the answer is no, it's not complicated. No, it's not hard to educate voters. It's easy. The handful of genuine arguments against ranked choice voting only come from folks who are very happy with the status quo and don't want it to change. Folks who think that the current system is working well for them don't have incentive to change it. But those aren't necessarily based on the merits of ranked choice voting.
Okay, guys, thanks. And Colin, you called out Eli a moment ago, and so to maintain some equilibrium in the universe, here's a question from Eli to you, Colin. Eli says, I watched with some trepidation the nomination of Hobbs for Secretary of State. Have you been in touch with him since then? Do you have some gauge of his position?
Yeah, so I'll take the first stab, and Steph, you can add if I miss anything. We're currently trying to arrange a meeting with his office in the first week of January. Secretary Hobbs and I are not close in any meaning of the word, but we do go way back. Because when I was 17 in high school, then Senator Steve Hobbs prime sponsored a bill I wrote for a high school project. We can talk about what it was later. It didn't pass. He got colleagues were really mean to him about it. But he and I met then, and he always remembers me because he got bad press because of the bill he worked with some high school student about. And then a few years later, I sold him a suit at the Men's Warehouse right up here in Linwood, Washington. Go Linwood. Go 21st. And I've gotten to meet with him a bunch of times about this bill. So we haven't met with him in his new capacity as Secretary of State. But what I can say is, although then Senator Hobbs, did not like the ranked choice voting local options bill, the reason that he gave was that he actually likes state preemption. He likes making sure that every jurisdiction is playing by the same set of rules around the state. And he didn't like the idea of Seattle using a different primary system than everyone else, because that seems like it opens doors that he didn't personally like. But that background actually makes me think, in light of all of the amazing work that Steph's helped make sure gets done in 2021, along with all of the amazing volunteers on the call, is that places are now finding ways to advance ranked choice voting without the bill. Clark County and San Juan County will be voting on it in November of this year. King County almost had it on the ballot this year. In Yakima County, ranked choice voting was very close to being imposed as a remedy to a Washington Voting Rights Act complaint that ended up settling out of court. What this means is, absent our bill passing and establishing a uniform, statewide, consistent framework that says what the rules of ranked choice voting are, you're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5 counties coming up with their own patchwork systems and their own rules, which is exactly the problem that then Senator Hobbs said he wanted to avoid. So I am cautiously optimistic that Secretary Hobbs will see the value and strength in passing a uniform statewide standard by supporting the ranked choice voting local options bill, and we'll know more in early January.
Okay, great. In the Q&A, it's been noted that 95% of New York City voters were satisfied with ranked choice voting when asked in exit polls, which sets me up nicely for a question David had, which is, to what extent did the New York City primary help the ranked choice voting cause in Washington?
I would say that it helped tremendously. We were a little nervous about it. Like, what's going to happen? Are people going to be confused? Are people going to and also how's the media going to interpret what happens, what the results are? It's been really wonderful because the number one thing when you're trying to reform democracy, I have found, or to have is to have conversations about ranked choice voting. New York City was a giant race. They saw outstanding turnout, the highest turnout that they have seen in years for the Democratic primary for mayor. And that got people talking, and I think part of it was the number of candidates, and there were a lot of people. Part of it was definitely ranked choice voting. And it was impossible for the media to just skip that part. So I think New York, the actual election went very well. And then I was really impressed by the way people talked about ranked choice voting afterwards. There were problems with the New York City election. They were almost entirely prescribed accurately to the Board of Elections in New York City, which is not great, I think was the general analysis there. And that was really what the problem was. It wasn't ranked choice voting. Like, ranked choice voting got a little bit of a hard time, I think, in the lead up to New York, and that's what was making us nervous. But then after New York City happened, everyone just said, wow, that Board of Elections seems to have messed up a fairly simple process. To be fair to the Board of Elections, they were also working with a lot of new things to New York City that would not be new here in Washington, like the tremendous number of mail-in ballots, the extended voting window. Those are pieces that our auditors and our Secretary of State have already dealt with. So those challenges are not challenges that we are anticipating for ranked choice voting here in Washington. So I think folks here in Washington knew that. So they were really we were really just interested in how the ranked choice voting process worked, and it did. So okay. I think New York is great for us. Colin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a couple things. To also be fair to the New York Board of Elections in a way that is not nice to them, but is nice to our elections administrators here in Washington. The other big thing is that one of the consistent themes Steph and I have talked about before is how a lot of the hard questions have already been solved and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Well, in New York, the Board of Elections kind of wanted to reinvent the wheel in some ways, and they declined to work with some of the national experts who have done this before. There's actually a couple really interesting pieces in the New York Times and Washington Post where they quote a friend of mine and titan in the space, Chris Hughes at the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, who mentions that he began emailing the New York Board of Elections way back in May, asking if he could help. They never responded. He emailed them in June, and in September, he emailed them on election day and said, I'm in the city. If you want, let me know. I will come help. And they didn't reach out to him. Here in Washington State, they have already invited, Director Wise invited Chris Hughes to present to the Washington State County Auditors. People from other cities like Minneapolis have been brought in to testify before the legislature, and we're not afraid to look to others and learn from them. So not only was the New York experience really, really good for us, 3 times as many people began using ranked choice voting in America as had done before because New York City adopted it. But also the challenges that they had either are learning moments or are challenges we're not going to run into. The last note I'll just say briefly is there was a lot of focus on the mayor's race. I'm really excited though about the city council races in New York City with ranked choice voting. They have elected the most racially diverse and the largest number of women to the New York City Council in that body's history.
And young people.
And young people, thank you. Yes. And these are claims that RCV advocates often make based off of math or theory or like small cases like looking in Santa Fe. But when you're looking at a city as massive as New York City with 60 city councilors, these trends stop looking like little blips on the radar and become trend lines. So New York has been really good for the movement here in Washington.
Great. So Scott asks, if FairVote Washington was able to meet stretch goals for donations and volunteers, what additional activities would that enable? And I think, Stephanie, that's a nice question for you.
Sure. Oh my gosh. So the question is basically, if I had my dream budget, what could I do?
or at least your stretch dream budget of,
Okay,
of,
that's
of donations and volunteers.
I'll take that. The first thing that I would do is actually start working on. I would first of all, I would hire 1 million organizers. I would hire as many organizers as this stretch budget would allow, because I think having those, because what I would want to do is start hosting small get-togethers to start talking about what people in Washington see as the challenges that we're facing here. I think here in the Pacific Northwest and also in my home state of Massachusetts, there's a little bit of a, well, we don't do voter suppression up here. We have plenty, we are working on the best democracy ever. We're already all set. There are some challenges though, and I think ranked choice voting is going to solve a lot of those challenges, but getting that conversation going is really, really tough. So if I had the ability to just start having small conversations, those small organized parties, which sound like they are inexpensive and easy to organize, they are not. I would want to invest in organizing across the entire state. And when I say the entire state, I'm not saying King County. I'm saying the entire state. I think it's really cool. I want to call back something that Colin said earlier. The city of Spokane has already chosen to say yes to ranked choice voting in the way that they can. They can't start using it yet, but in the way that they can. And I think like having those conversations all around Spokane, having those conversations in North Central Washington would be amazing, would be absolutely amazing. And then I would want to start hosting some kind of wider forums so that once we've told people like, there's a problem with the way that we're doing democracy, we can also start talking about the solutions in a really like strategic way that says like, we understand that there's a problem. This is a solution. Let's talk about how we're going to get this done. And I would want to do that statewide. I would, that's the other piece. Right now we're doing some smaller work, and I think that that's going to be vital for building up our ranked choice voting movement. But in the end, I want this to be statewide. And I think it absolutely can be. I think that Washington is a leader in democracy reform, and that this is just the next step for Washington to take. So I think that is what I would do. I mean, if I could keep going, I would also really want to, have some like interesting like digital outreach, and also to start working more strategically. I think even in Clark County, I think there are some really cool elections happening down there, and I'm happy to wax poetic about those another time. I think we're running a little tight on time here. But that is what I would do. So I just talked for a really long time. That is what I would do. If you're interested in helping me achieve my stretch budget, like Scott suggested, which thank you, Scott, you just like teed this up perfectly for me. We would love it if any of you would be able to donate to us. Also, when you volunteer, similar to the volunteer website. Oh, I see Jessica, our fabulous development director, is throwing it right in the chat, I think. It's FairVote, it's fairvotewa.org, and there is a donate button. She's also being kind enough to say sign up here for my volunteer team. We are going to hit the ground running in January. Like I said, we're definitely going to hire an organizer, like immediately. We are also going to start reaching out to our legislators, letting them know that ranked choice voting is no longer a conversation just happening among political theorists. This is for voters. And we're going to have to talk to folks in the House and the Senate. So we are going to be looking for people to join our team in that way. So please sign up, donate your time. If you can't donate your time, please consider a financial donation. Or if you can't make a financial donation, please donate your time. Really, those are the options that are springing to mind. I'm not sure if this is when I'm supposed to be signing off, but feel free to reach out to me. I know we will also be sending around a Google form. There we go. to see how you felt about tonight's roadmap episode. Please fill it out. Some of you, I think, were here last month, and I enjoyed reading all of your responses. It's a really great opportunity for you to tell me that I did a really good job. It's also an opportunity for you to tell Colin and Mark that they did a good job, but it's also an opportunity for you to tell us how you think that we could have done better. And also to ask, like, what should we do next? We have a couple of outlines for the next couple, but we would love to hear what you want to know. We live and breathe ranked choice voting. So if you have an outside perspective that you think would be really valuable, you think we should talk about, we would love to hear about it. I know that it is the holiday season and that we are all getting hundreds of emails a day from a lot of organizations asking for donations or telling us what gifts to buy, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a little form asking you how you can support ranked choice voting, and how we can better support you supporting ranked choice voting. So I'm sorry, Mark, if I jumped the gun. I just kind of took off there, but I'll hand it back.
That was perfect. That's perfect. And we're coming to the end of our time. That was a very nice way to end. I mean, because there's so much energy in the room. And having people here, people who are with us, how they can help us achieve our goals is just the right way to end. And so, we want to thank everyone here for joining us for this evening's session. And we hope you got a lot out of it. We hope we got you energized to continue the conversation with us at fairvotewa.org and through the outreach that Stephanie mentioned. And we really, not just that we hope to invite you to continue the conversation, we warmly invite you to do it. I mean, we cannot be successful without you. This organization's a volunteer-run organization, except for a small number of staff who give their heart for this. And so we really need you to pitch in and to really help us in terms of strengthening democracy, getting voices heard, and making the country a better country. And we'll start with Washington. So with that, everyone, we'll leave you with holiday wishes to each of you and your families. And thank you and take care. Have a good evening.